This is the Tamron 17-50mm f4, and it sounds like an APS-C lens. However, make no mistake, it is full frame. It's an interesting lens because at 17mm, you're bona fide ultra wide angle. At 50mm, you're quite normal. Tamron came out with the 20-40, and then Sony upped the ante with the 20-70. Now Tamron is upping the ante again with the 17-50. These brands, they're competing, and they're competing hard. It's like they're trying to capture the entire market by expanding their range and taking over more and more territory without causing war. And yeah, I'll be looking at sharpness, autofocus, bokeh, and more. Chapters in the description. Basic. No locking mechanism. It's not exactly small and it's not exactly big. Weather sealing gasket. Button for AF USB-C. 67mm filter thread. For the autofocus test, I used the bike to achieve higher speeds to try to trick the autofocus because running would cause a heart attack. From my sequences here, I can just grab any shot, okay? And you can see that it is going to be in focus. And the background's blurred, so you know that this is at f4 and 50mm. Tamron has the VXD motor, the equivalent to Sony's linear focus motor, and it works well. Let's see this sequence right here. I don't think I have any misses anywhere. Okay, so it will miss towards the end of the frame. You see this? This is one of the misses, and it's trying to regain, but I'm out of the frame already. Here's another sequence. And I could just pull anywhere. Oh, I'm already zoomed in, so you can see when I'm zoomed out, it's like that. And when I'm zoomed in, you can see it's starting to go out of focus, but you know, I'm really close to the lens, so every lens is going to have a limit, as you can see right here. And I'm speeding down this. It's going to miss if you're going to get really close to the lens. Keep in mind, this lens is f4, so it does have good depth of field. This lens isn't going to be a sporting lens because of the reach. 50mm isn't close, and in practical use, I really can't see this missing at all. It's going to miss if you force it to miss, or if you're trying to do something crazy like this and capture way outside of the frame. The autofocus was tremendously good. Minimum focus distance is pretty good. At 17, you gotta get really close, and it might be impractical. At 50mm, well, you can't get quite as close. However, you can still zoom in, and it is going to magnify pretty good. It is very usable. All right, it's time for the sharpness test, and right before I get to that, let's just look at the focal lengths. This is 17mm. This is 20. 17, 20. Let's go to the next set. This is 50mm. This is 35, 50, and 70. Okay, so if you're looking for one of these ultra wide lenses versus normal lenses, 35, 50, 70. Each jump is very noticeable. Now we're going to do another comparison. I got the 16-35. You see that? 16-35. You can clearly see it's a little bit wider. So let's see wide open. Okay, how's that look? Here's the Tamron. Here is the Sony. On close inspection, it's a bit hard to tell, but I think the Sony is a little bit sharper. Let's move towards the mid frame. This tree right here. I'm having a hard time telling them apart. Far corners. This tree is in the light. It's easier to tell the fine detail. Here is the Tamron. Here is the Sony. There's some softening with the Sony. It's not going to be perfect. It is a zoom. Here's a Tamron. Here's the Sony. I mean, once you go over here just a little bit, the Tamron's a little bit better. Tamron, Sony. It's a little bit of a give and take. The Sony has a little bit more definition in the middle. Tamron takes it a little bit on the far corners. Okay, so we'll be jumping to f8. This is the Tamron, and as you can see, vignetting is practically gone. They're comparable at this f8. Granted, the Tamron is a little bit more magnified. Right about here. Here's the Tamron. Here's the Sony. This is kind of hard, okay? there's not a whole lot of difference. So let's go to the far corners. You see that little haloing effect on the Sony, and here's the Tamron. It's a little bit more detailed and defined. All right, now we've got the 20-70 versus the Tamron 17-50 at 20 millimeters, and you can see that the 20-70 has quite a bit less vignetting. Zooming in, let's see how well they resolve these trees. I say the lighting is slightly off because of the rolling clouds. I mean, the detail amount, you can see that on both of them quite clearly. Okay, here's the mid frame. The 20-70 looks better here, but it's a bit awkward because of that lighting issue. Okay, so here's a good detail to pay attention to. The far corners. Yes, the 20-70 is clearly sharper, wide open. All right, here's f8, both at 20. And now this 17-50 at 20 really shines now. You can see the clear detail, even though the lighting's not that great. And the fencing material, it's clear. Let's see that again. It's good, but it's not, let's say, an ultra prime level, but it is quite good on both of them. Okay, so compared to the 16-35, there's no vignetting issue with the Tamron. Okay, so starting at the center, Tamron is good here. Sony is good. Is it equally as good? The Tamron is a little bit sharper in the center. At the mid frame, Tamron holds the lead, and that's understandable because the Sony it's on the far end of the range. And both have some degradation. I believe the Sony's degradation is a little bit more, and you can tell that right here. This thing it's a bit mush. You can make out the details, however, there is a halo effect, and it's kind of clear. The Tamron, the lighting's not optimal, and even over here, there's not as much haloing. Okay, now heading to f8. Okay, so this is Tamron. Looks good. Everything's nice and crispy. And Sony has came back, and it's coming back hard. Is it more? It's comparable. The mid frame, both of them have great amounts of detail. Okay, so let's go to the far corners. Oh, they are close, but that lighting is so screwed up. They look fairly comparable, top down. So it seems to do a tug of war with the 16-35, but can it really catch up to the 20-70, which is a stellar lens? Oh, here we go. Let's get started. Wide open in the center. It is a strong performer at 50. And here's the 20-70. The Sony is a bit more magnified. Yeah, and it's not quite as sharp either. Okay, so let's move towards the mid frame, which would be right about here. These steps, the Tamron is a little bit better. So this seems like it's starting off as another tug of war. Okay, so this fence detail, we are with the Tamron, and here's the Sony. So it's not that much of a tug of war. They're both fairly close because you can see that right here, we're at the far corner / edge already right here. There's not much difference between the two. Okay, so now we're looking at the 50 f8 on both of them, and I can tell right away that this is just so sharp on the Tamron, and the Sony is blisteringly sharp too, and it's a little bit more magnified. It really is indeed. I have it marked at 49 millimeters based on the EXIF, and now the Sony has really come to life here. Let's see if the Tamron can handle, and I believe it does. Right here, Sony, Tamron, nice clear detail all the way around. At the far corners, I mean, the Tamron is going to be the darker, or because of the rolling clouds, and that color science is slightly warmer. Other than that, I think they're quite the same here. So Tamron does perform quite well. It does a back and forth battle with the 16-35. Not quite as sharp on the wider end, sharper on the longer end. The 20-70 mostly wins it. And if you haven't noticed already, there is distortion. This is at 17 millimeters, and there's a huge amount of barrel distortion. At 24 millimeters, quite a bit less barrel distortion. And at 50 millimeters, there's a bit of pin cushion, but it's not bad. All right, let's talk about bokeh. This is at 17 millimeters. I'm touching the lens vlogging distance, there's a little bit of blur. It's not a whole lot. Could be better because it's just f4, but it is okay. Am I coming in too hot? It's just the exposure a little bit. At a longer distance, 17 millimeters, okay, the background there, it's not really blurring much at all. Okay, maybe this is, but the background, no. So you'll need a longer focal length because that's just how bokeh works. Longer focal length, larger aperture, you get the deal. Now at 24, the background is quite nice. However, because I increased the distance, now the bokeh is not that good. But here's the money shot. It's going to be 50 millimeters. Even at this normal distance, half body up here, the background is nicely blurred out. This is Tamron's 2.0 type of lens in that it's their newer lens, and the blur quality is generally very good. And I didn't really notice any onion rings. Maybe I didn't pixel peep hard enough, but I thought it was pretty good. Further away, well, this tree might be in focus. A little bit the background, you can still see back there. There's going to be areas, and it gives sort of a 3D pop because it's still blurring. And that's the great thing about having 50 millimeters as opposed to maybe 35. Anyhow, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. All right, are you ready for the focus breathing test? That pole right here, that is the line, okay? You can just keep track of it, see if it moves in and out. But I think the focus breathing seems to be is mid. It's not that great at 17, okay? Yeah, it seems like it's moving around. So let's try 24. And let's see, where the heck did that go? All right, there, okay? So at 24, let's see. That looks better. I think looks better. Let's see. Right here. So it does a little bit of movement at 24. Not a whole lot. At 50, where'd it go? Right there. Okay, right there. Okay, we're gonna do at 50, okay? So this is at normal distance. I'm not doing like the full rack. So it's just mild focus breathing movement, okay? It's not the full continuous all the way down towards the end, but at 50, wow. Was that right? I could hardly see, but yeah, it looks like at 50, wow, it's near perfect. So the fact that this lens doesn't have that in-lens correction for focus breathing compensation because it's not Sony, it doesn't matter, because at 50, most of your focus pulls are gonna matter most at this focal range. I mean, there's a lot of background blur. So you're gonna be using this for the B-roll, and it looks good. Yeah, it looks good. All right, let's see if this lens is parfocal or not. I'm not sure. So I'm all the way at 50, and here is 17. I believe if you are in at 50 already focused, then it's gonna work out, but it's like cheating, right? It's not the way I typically do like these types of focus pull. Okay, so now let's just turn on the focus. Okay. So now I am focused at the wide end, turning off autofocus. If I zoom all the way in, I'm out of focus. In focus, out of focus. So this lens is not parfocal. I mean, it's not what I consider parfocal. If you zoom in first, yeah, it'll maintain it, but it's just not the way people do pulls, I don't think. Anyhow, that's just something to be aware of. Next up, we look at vlogging. We see how this lens performed against a 20-70. 20mm gets cropped in with active and dynamic stabilization. So this is using dynamic stabilization on the ZVE1. It's smooth as butter. However, is it wide enough for you? Next up, the 17-50 at 17. You can definitely feel that it's wider. You can definitely feel the lens is easier to hold because of the shape and size. However, maybe stabilization isn't as good. Is this good enough for you? Let me know in the comments below. Alright, we're going to do some size comparisons. Okay, so here's a few lenses. This is 16-35, 17-50, and the 20-70. So this is another popular lens. This is internal zooming. So these two, they stay the same size. This one, it zooms out to be that big when fully extended. So this one, it's nice that it's internal zooming. This one little oddity is that this part right here, it goes really deep and it's kind of funky. You could stick your finger in there. It's just so much open space. I wish it was like sealed or something. But yeah, that's just something to be aware of. And I got a few other lenses. Let's see. Here is compared to the Sigma 28-70 f2.8, a little bit smaller. However, it does extend. Okay, and another lens, the 28-200, which is a little bit longer and a whole lot longer once it's fully extended. So there it is, the size comparisons between 17-50 and all these other lenses that might fall into your category of just like a normal everyday zoom type of lens that's kind of small and rangy. Next up, let's have a look at flare. We start off at 17mm and that green splotch. It's quite minor in my opinion. For an ultra wide lens, it's not going to be that much of an issue. The sun's going to be in your lens. You won't be able to shade it. So that's why the flare performance is important, and the more you zoom in, the less it shows. Moving on, let's take a look at Sunstars. And I think it's serviceable. Here it is at 17mm. It's not GM or Voigtlander-ish. Here it is at 50mm, and it would be nicer if the Sunstars itself were sharper. It's mid, at least it's not bad. Final thoughts. The Tamron 17-50 f4 is a strong all-around lens that is aggressively priced at $699. It tries to find its niche with a range in between Sony's two ultra-wide lenses, and it's a stronger people lens compared to the 16-35 PZ because of focal length, and a stronger landscape lens compared to the 20-70. However, the distortion may be an issue for architectural photographers. The size of the lens is on the larger end when compared to the Sony alternatives. However, it has a clear and distinct coverage, which may be your preference. This can be a one-stop shop single lens solution for many. The range is darn near perfect for travelers, content creators, or annoying influencers. Sure, the lens isn't parfocal and the corners are darker than a downtown back alley, but it's hard to ignore how sharp Tamron has been building their latest lenses, with good bokeh no less. Coming in at a significantly lower price with a range completely unique to other brands, I think Tamron will make a lot of people happy. Anyhow, thank you so much for watching. Be sure to like, subscribe, share. See you in the next one. Take care.